The Incredibles is a top 3 Pixar movie. It's with giants like Ratatouille, Monsters Inc., and maybe Toy Story. In my opinion, Ratatouille is the best one, but that's a video for another day. The animation medium is mostly known for its kids movies. Think Despicable Me, The Smurfs, honestly any Sony animation movie that isn't Spider-Verse. People assume animation is targeted towards kids. But with The Incredibles, on my most recent rewatch, I realized how many adult themes are actually in the movie. So in today's video, we're going to be going over these adult themes and explaining why The Incredibles is actually a movie for adults and less of a movie for kids. The first topic I want to get underway is marriage, cheating, and divorce. This movie is centered a lot around Helen and Bob's relationship and their marriage. For example, at the beginning of the movie, Mr. Incredible, or Bob, is late to his own wedding because he's busy doing hero stuff. He stops a train, he saves a guy from committing suicide, he tries to stop Bon Voyage, but in the end, he is still late to his own wedding, and he doesn't know how to put his work stuff aside to be with his wife, even on the most important day of their lives. Onto the cheating aspect, you have Bob, after being fired, working long hours for a mysterious company that Helen doesn't know about. She assumes his business trips are actually for business, and she never quite mistrusts him up until she talks to Edna. When Edna talks to her, she starts to get suspicious, and when she fires his location, that's when Bob gets caught. The thought of him cheating on her caused her to press that button, and is a crucial scene that goes on. But for kids, they're just thinking about how they don't want him to get caught. But for anyone in the audience that is an adult and realizes that her natural tenacity is going through because if she presses that button, she's admitting that she doesn't trust him. There's a powerful scene in the movie. After the plane crash and Helen goes to find Bob, she leaves Dash and Violet in the cave alone. They build a fire and talk about how their parents could potentially get a divorce. This makes Dash sad, but on the other hand, Violet's kind of accepted it and realizes that it might become a reality. So not only is their marriage not important to Bob, not only does Helen mistrust him and think he might be cheating because of the way he acts, but the decision that's happening is also weighing on their own children. That's heavy stuff for a movie that should be about superheroes. The second thing I want to focus on is missing things in your life and dwelling on the past. Bob is a prime example of this problem. He has a whole room dedicated to his glory days with his old suit, newspaper clippings, fan stuff, literally everything that he has to remember the good old days. And it's very odd because Helen seems pretty content with her life and her role as a housewife. She takes care of her kids, she's dedicated about it, she cooks, she cleans, the typical back in the day housewife stuff. Like I said, she seems very content with her.
I think you're actually gonna do it.
This was a mistake. Like I said, she's very...
Okay, I'll stop.
This was a mistake.
Helen seems very content with her life as a mom and as a wife and wants to support her kids and husband best way she can. Bob, on the other hand, is struggling with that. He's very nonchalant at work, and the only time we see him get even remotely feeling anything is when hero stuff comes up. Obviously, he sees that woman getting robbed outside and tries to save them, but in the end, he throws his boss through like 100 balls. But then there's also another scene right at the beginning when he's at work and a woman comes in about her insurance, and he does everything in his power to help her, even though he's technically not supposed to. That's him looking back on his hero lifestyle and how he misses it dearly, while everyone else in his family just wants to be normal. He goes as far as to listen to police scanners with his old hero buddy just to get a sense of how he felt back in the old days. He can't let go of the past. He's like that high school football player that says if he didn't break his knee, he would have went pro. A lot of middle-aged men and people in general can kind of relate to Bob, as maybe they don't like their life now, but back when they were younger and full of life, they did. Whereas kids, on the other hand, just see it as Bob being stupid and wanting to be a hero. A very dark theme in this movie, and the third one I want to touch upon, is death, kidnapping, and attempting to kill children. There's a whole scene where Bob breaks into the computer room and realizes that all of his friends are dead, and that Syndrome's using him as one of them, and that Syndrome attempts to kill Bob himself. This realization is a very dark and very serious scene in the movie that when I was a kid personally watching it, didn't really understand, and I wanted to go back to the fun parts. Another very serious and honestly a heart-wrenching scene in the movie is when the plane explosion happens. Syndrome, knowing there are children on this plane, tries to send missiles to kill them. Not only that, but he then sends his henchmen out to also try to kill these kids. There's a literal scene where a dude does not hesitate to start shooting his gun at Violet because she went invisible. Not only is this guy trying to kill children, and this is a constant back-to-back-to-back thing in this movie, but also during the plane crash scene, Syndrome talk about how he's going to shoot his family out of the sky. Bob, for a good section of the movie, thinks his family is dead, and that's when he starts to realize that maybe his family was more important than him dwelling in the past. He's so sad to the point where he tries to take away the only thing that Syndrome has in his girlfriend. I don't know her name.
Mirage.
Thank you. He gets to the point where he's so sad that he tries to take away Mirage from Syndrome, but he can't bring himself to do it. He is blatantly devastated. His kids and his wife are dead. Him and his family get kidnapped. Syndrome attempts to kill his kids on multiple occasions, and the heroes that he worked with back in the day are known to be dead. Death and mortality is constantly talked about and shown in this movie for kids. Think about the scene where Mr. Incredible jumps off the cliff into the waterfall and hides behind his old friend Gazer Beam's skeleton. He literally has seconds to process that his old friend is dead. I'm gonna have to cut so much footage. Death is so talked about, shown, and acted upon in this movie, and it holds so much weight for a lot of the scenes that only in my recent viewing I realized. It holds a lot of emotional weight and makes the climax even more intense as an adult. The last scene that I just touched upon was family versus work. Like I mentioned at the beginning, he shows up late to his own wedding to do work. Not only that, both him and his wife are working on their wedding day. They can't put aside helping people because it's in their nature, but at the same time, they don't know how to prioritize themselves. Later in the movie, Helen realizes that her family is more important and that they aren't wanted by the community, but Bob just can't let that part of him go, and he can't focus on his family. Think about the scene when they have dinner together. Bob is uninterested in any of the conversation happening. Dash went to the principal's office that day, and he doesn't care until the superpowers are mentioned. Not only that, but when he goes into the kitchen, he looks at the newspaper and sees that Gazer Beam is missing. He cares more about that stuff than he does actually his family and talking to his wife and kids. The only parts he cares about is when it brings superpowers into it or his old hero life. Another thing I want to bring up that I also mentioned was in that scene when he hears that his kids and wife may have died in that plane crash. He's devastated. He finally realizes that his work shouldn't be above his family. He doesn't have anything to live for anymore, and he shows that. When he finally sees his wife again, he's beyond happy. And he realizes that his kids are also alive, and it's as happy as he is in the whole film. He realizes that sure, his hero work is important and that people around him deserve to be helped, but also his family, his wife, his kids all come first. It's a topic anyone can relate to. Learning how to balance the prioritization of yourself and your work above your mental state happens way too often. You want to please your boss, you want to get that raise, you want to do all these different things, but in the end, the only thing that's going to matter on your deathbed is that you spent time with your loved ones. A very adult mindset to have in this superhero kids movie. With all of that being said, I think Incredibles was a movie made for adults that was targeted towards kids because of its Disney Pixar name. Animation's a medium that can hold a bunch of different tones for kids, adults, teenagers, anything. I mean, think about Toy Story 3. That movie held more weight towards the people who grew up with it than the kids that may have watched it at the time. I know when I watched it for the first time, I was maybe 13 or 14 and I was bawling. You also think of a movie like Sausage Party that went mega viral because adults and parents saw the animation and thought that it had to be for kids and there was no way that it could include the content that it does. But anyway, I really need recommendations on new things to watch down below. I'm currently going through my last watch through of Attack on Titan, so that's probably going to be the next video. My Twitch and Twitter in the description. I don't really use them that much, but they're there. Comment what you think, like, subscribe, all that jazz. It's been Jojo Hinky. Peace.
Yeah! Woo! Let's go! Woo! Love that guy.
Thank you to our live studio audience, Jonathan and Timothy. They were a big help.
No, wait, right?